You heard the story of Zacchaeus this morning. How many of you were thinking about a little song that you heard in Sunday school? Me too. My wife told me I couldn't sing it. She's probably right. So I will tell you another story, a personal story, that sort of brought me into Zacchaeus' experience around Good Friday, 15 years ago or so. 2 days before Good Friday, I was looking for a four-wheel drive vehicle and inspected one. I didn't buy it, but in the process of inspecting it, I did what men do, stood up on the bumper and jumped off to see if the suspension was good. Now, the thing is, the suspension on these type of vehicles is rock hard, and that doesn't prove anything, except that when you land, as I did, you pull a hamstring muscle. Oh, I'd never felt such pain, such sharp stabbing pain. It didn't go away for about 5 days, and I passed Good Friday, I'd say 5 inches shorter than I normally am. Now, on Good Friday, we were living in Regina at the time. The Roman Catholic Archdiocese had what they called stations in the city, which is stations of the cross observed at various places in the downtown core that correspond to them. For instance, when Jesus is on trial, you're in front of the courthouse. Their youth group carried the cross. They had readings at these places. And it was such an out-of-the-normal experience for me that it became very spiritual. I'd done it before. I wanted to do it again. Except I'd pulled a hamstring muscle. So there I was, not only shorter, but so slow in my movements that I was getting in the way of people with walkers. I was the last one up the sidewalk, hobbling along, and really looking kind of funny. And I'd get there, wherever we were, and there'd be a crowd, and I could kind of hear things, but I'd stop hopping on one leg to see if I could see anything. And I became more and more frustrated because then the crowd would move on, and I just got there. I wanted to participate in some way or other, and at a certain point along the way, the Spirit of Christ within said, "Peter, does this remind you of anything?" Oh, yeah. Someone else who couldn't see. And I realized on this particular Good Friday, my spiritual experience was going to be different, but it would be real. What is it like to identify with a person who has no access, can't get there, to this, to that, not enough something else, and simply can't get access to Jesus? It's one thing to say Jesus is for everybody. It's another thing to make it so that everybody can get there. Well, that brings us to the story, which is one of the last stories on Jesus' trip in the book of Luke to Jerusalem and the cross. When he is on his way and goes through Jericho, which is what the British would say the dodgy part of Judea. Those areas that Jesus seems to seek out, because dodgy areas are dodgy because they have dodgy people. And he came to seek out such people, which is a concept that always catches me off guard. There was a man there. His name, Zacchaeus, which means, ironically, pure. He's the head taxman and quite rich. Now, if you're at the head taxman, you pay taxes to the overarching Roman government, and their method was to say, you pay all the taxes, we give you the right to tax everybody else. So somehow Zacchaeus had the money up front, and he was then able to set his own tax rate and to hire underlings to administer it. So if you got money, you can make money. That's who he was. And he was quite rich. He had been able to manage the system, and it worked for him. You can understand why he wasn't popular. What I don't understand is that he wanted desperately to see Jesus. There are a lot of people who are unpopular for that and don't care. So why did he care to see a poor Palestinian itinerant preacher who had a ragtag bag of people following him who were nothing like himself, except for one thing, that Jesus himself had deliberately called the tax collector to be one of his disciples, Matthew, the publican, the same Matthew who lends his name to the gospel, sending out a signal to others that whereas the rank and file for many years had said, you are not invited to the publicans, this one was different. So he's desperate to see Jesus, but the crowd was in his way. He was a short man and couldn't see over the crowd, and I suspect being short and unpopular as well, and famous and well known in a relatively small community, I'd climb a tree if I was him too, just to stay out of the way. A sycamore tree is between 15 and 45 feet tall. My guess at this point would be it's around 20 feet here, and it has broad spreading branches that are tough enough to hold some people, and I doubt that he was the only one up in a tree, but he certainly got there, and he ran on ahead to reserve his seat and climb up in the tree so he could see Jesus when he came by. Doesn't sound like there's going to be any stop here. It doesn't sound like there's going to be a teaching event. There's simply a crowd that moves, and a crowd always followed Jesus. And as they move through the situation, he hopes to catch a glimpse of him, and that would be a good day. I still wonder, Zacchaeus, why do you care? This is nothing but trouble to you. When Jesus got to the tree, has he been looking for this? Did he go to Jericho to find this man? When he got to the tree, he looked up and said, Zacchaeus, hurry down. Today's my day to be a guest in your home. Actually, the words are stiffer than that. It's Jesus looking up at Zacchaeus and saying, Zacchaeus, get down here right now. I'm coming to your place. Get ready. And the entourage that comes with him follows along with him. Zacchaeus scrambles out of the tree, hardly believing his good luck, delighted to take Jesus home with him. Once again, what's in it for you, Zacchaeus? You realize that the one you are letting into your house is a poor man. He does not have a home. He does not have a bank account. He has nothing reserved for himself. He told his disciples when they came to follow him, I don't know where I'm sleeping tonight, just so you know. So why are you letting him into your house? He brings with him an ocean of need. And you know what that'll do? That'll just open the tap and it'll never stop flowing. And I know what'll happen. We'll all go bankrupt because you can never satisfy all that. Can you hear all of the ifs, ands, and buts that could enter into that kind of a thing? But he's delighted to bring trouble to his own home in the person of Jesus Christ. Actually, what he brought to his own home was change. It would be inevitable. Everyone who saw the incident was indignant and grumped. What business does he have getting cozy with this crook? Now, they couldn't care less about Zacchaeus. They have already passed judgment on him. What they are concerned about is the religious standing of Jesus, who repeatedly in all of the Gospels receives criticism because he deliberately associates himself. This isn't an accident. It isn't a one-off. He repeatedly and regularly associates with his people and goes out of his way to find them. And when asked about it, he says, I've come to save and restore the lost. You declare him lost, I'll go find him. But you see, that's not what we're looking for. We want somebody who comes to redeem those who need very little. Just a touch here or there, and we'll be fine. But those who are utterly and irredeemably beyond the pale, as far as we're concerned, we would like them to stay that way, because it's easier to think and conceive of the world that way. I know where I'm at. When publicans and sinners are out, and I am not, and I have a leader who assures me, you're good, right there. The grumping takes place at Zacchaeus' house. There he is, entertaining Jesus, and the complaints arise and begin to make, I am assuming, enough noise that they have to come out and confront those who criticize. What's the problem here? Well, the problem is, Jesus, you're not supposed to associate with this kind of person. And Jesus says nothing. Zacchaeus is the one who speaks up. He just stood there, a little stunned. He stammered apologetic. What's he stunned at, by the way? He cannot be stunned at their attitude towards him. That's old stuff. He cannot be stunned at their attitude towards Jesus. Perhaps the thing that stuns him is that he's the one who has to give the answer. Me? You're looking at me to give the answer? Okay. He stammered apologetically and says nothing to the crowd at all. He looks to Jesus and says to him, and this may be the first time he's ever revealed this to anybody, Master, I give away half my income to the poor, and if I'm caught cheating, which is kind of saying, if I'm caught sweet-talking somebody out of their money, it sounds like an investment deal, I pay 4 times the damages. Whoa. How long has he been doing this? The classic way of telling this story is, from now on, Jesus, since you came to my house and now I'm saved, from now on, I'll give away half my income and 4 times what I cheat. But that's not what it says. What it says is, actually, this has been my practice for years. All the years, I've been called crook, thief, scum. I gave away half my income to the poor. And if I cheated anybody, they got 4 times back. And you might add in parenthesis, and got no credit whatsoever. A friend of mine who serves among orphans in Cambodia and feeds them and clothes them, educates them in their own language so they can return to their own country and try to lift some of the situations that exist in that place, was confronted by some men at one point who said, we want to be Christians. We too are hungry. And you could tell the connection that they had made. We are starving, but we have heard of Christ, and you are following Christ, and your children eat. We would like to eat. Jesus equals food. So I believe in Jesus equals I can eat. Now, there are plenty of people in Jesus' day who believed exactly the same thing. But the woman who worked with them looked at the men and said, you need to understand this. If you come to Jesus, you must bring sacrifices. And it had not occurred to them that what goes around comes around, and what comes around goes around. That there are those who sit at the Lord's table, but they only prepare the table on the basis of what they themselves have brought. Zacchaeus seems to have understood something. That if in fact you follow God in the new kingdom that's coming, you open your wallet. Major theme in the Gospel of Luke. There is no coming to Christ but reserving my resources, making them available to the community. That's what it means to follow. And Zacchaeus had at least got that much. And while he had not resigned his position, he had reversed the flow of that cash and instituted some regulations on himself that, by the way, come from the Old Testament as to how he governs himself, even though people saw it, disregarded it, and still counted him as an outsider. If this is true, should I vote for Trump or Clinton? Now here I've got two rich people. And I have Christians all over the place telling me they aren't. They're in, they're out. Excuse me? How should I judge that? All I know is what Jesus said at the end of this. Today is salvation day in this home. Here he is, Zacchaeus, a son of Abraham. Seriously? Zacchaeus, salvation comes today in this home. Basically, I think means Zacchaeus today, all of the old cloak of scorn that was placed upon you has been lifted. You are a child of God. You are a follower of Christ. You are part of the kingdom. Salvation is as salvation does. What had he indicated? That he had prayed the prayer to accept Jesus as his Savior? Doesn't say that. Had he been baptized? Don't hear about that. But what I do hear is that when he understood the call of the gospel of the kingdom, he began to change his life and move it in that direction, and had done so for quite a period of time, bringing, and how he got there, I don't know, but it brought him to the place where he said, I'd just like to see him once. And on that one occasion, Jesus Christ goes out of his way to pronounce justified a man everybody else denounced. I need to tell you something. This lays me out on the operating table and exposes by incision every prejudice I have. Everything I want to say about the rich, everything I want to say about the poor, everything I want to say about conservatives, everything I want to say about liberals, everything I want to say about any person, and asks me only this question: do I see any sign in this person that they have heard the gospel of the kingdom and begun to turn their lives in that direction? A man came to me once when I was a pastor of a church, wanted to join the church. I said, what's motivating you in this whole process? And he said, I'm a businessman. I've been blessed. I've got so much. Number one, there's got to be some place to give thanks. That was the first time thankfulness had ever been the basis of a conversion. And secondly, I've got to do justly. I've got to do right by my business and all the money I make. I need guidance and help. How do I do it? Can you believe it? Oh, yes. There are many such people who are looking for that. But I wonder if there's a crowd around them who's also looking. I wonder if there are people around the people you know who have learned to recognize the signs of the working of God in a human heart, who's still in the process of turning, like me. Still in the process of turning towards Christ, conforming my life to what he says, learning more about him and changing as I go. And where is the embrace? Rather than the folded arms that say, well, keep working on it. Maybe you'll get there. For the kingdom that followed Jesus was one that embraced somebody like Zacchaeus. At the end of the Gospel of Luke, after a whole litany of people who were rich and stories about rich people who came and then said, no, I don't think I want to follow. I have too much money, comes one man at the end who said, money's not going to stop me, and it's not going to stand in my way. I'll conform my life to the kingdom and grow as I go. That could be you, right? It certainly is me. I wonder if we're ready to embrace one another in the process. God bless you.